Welcome back, everyone, to the Reading by Candlelight Book Club at Molly's Cottage. It's our final interview for 2025, and I'm here with Matthew Spencer, author of oh my goodness, what did I do there? Author of Broke Road, which features in the December crime thriller book box. Welcome, Matthew.
Hello, thank you for having me at the end of a long year for everyone, I'm sure.
Now, readers, if this is your first time meeting Matthew, here's a little background. Matthew Spencer lives in Sydney with his wife and three children. He was a journalist at the Australian for 20 years, running the foreign news desk and as opinion editor. He has written for newspapers in Uganda and Kenya and been published in the Australian Financial Review and the Sydney Morning Herald. And his background makes me wish we had longer than 30 minutes to chat because what a fascinating life you have led.
Yeah, and I sort of fell into, I've always been a reader, and my degree from university is in English literature. So it's been my first love, certainly over journalism. Um, but I had my career in journalism. I think a lot of people who aspire to write but don't know how to do it might get into things like journalism because it's next door, adjacent, and that's certainly what happened with me.
That's amazing because I mean you've had such a illustrious career for somebody who wasn't going to do it.
Yeah, just did it as I never really love. I mean, I appreciate the importance of journalism in a democracy and all that sort of thing, but it's a pretty hard old job, and I don't think I ever really loved it. I was certainly not sorry to step away and leave it. Someone else can do that. Yeah.
Now, for readers who haven't read it yet, Matthew, can you give us a spoiler-free pitch for Broke Road?
All right, well, I'm going to sit up a bit straighter. I'm never very good on the pitches. Even for Black River, my first book, I never quite got the pitch right, and Broke Road, I certainly don't. So bear with me. But it's set 2 years after Black River. It retains the homicide detective Rose Riley from Black River and the journalist Adam Bowman. They both come over and sort of saddle up again in Broke Road. As I say, it's 2 years later, and it's a series without being a sequel. So if you want to dip your toe in and have a look, you could certainly read Broke Road before Black River. If you know you're going to read them both, I would probably suggest you read Black River first, just because the characters move on, and the big thing with Broke Road was what's the relationship of these two characters 2 years later when they actually know each other. So that wasn't a pitch at all. The pitch is that a body of a youngish woman, sort of 26, 27, has been found partially clad with no obvious signs of struggle or anything in her home, which is a new apartment in a district in New South Wales called Colburn, which is really the heart of Hunter Valley wine country. And Riley, who's a homicide detective, is sent from Sydney to look, is this going to be our case, essentially? And she doesn't know that when she's sent up there. The book opens at sort of 11 o'clock in the evening when she's woken and sent out there to look. It quickly balloons in, well, I'm not sure how quickly, but it balloons into other things. There's forensic evidence around that point to the fact that what has happened here might have happened in other states in Australia over the last couple of years. So really that's the pitch, and it's most definitely a police procedural.
Now, yes. So even though this is the second story, the second book with your smart and gutsy homicide detective, Rose Riley, it can definitely be read as a standalone story because I've read both, and I can say that you can read the second and not have read the first. But the first Black River was where your two characters met. And it's inspired by your childhood living with your teacher parents on this 320-acre campus of a boys' boarding school. What was the inspiration behind Broke Road?
Oh, that's a good question. So I came very late to novel writing, and I didn't start earlier because I just assumed I couldn't do it. Because
Oh,
I thought if you were going to write a story like this, you needed to know your story before you started. Um, and then when I sort of quit my job as a journalist, I was reading fiction writers talking about or writing about how fiction is written. And what they said, what they all said was that all you needed was an idea, a simple idea. If you have it, you'll know you have it. So it's not just the idea you had last Monday. It'll be something that stuck with you and you'll have been carrying it around. And I'm sure having written a manuscript and now working on another one, will understand that. Um, so Black River came out of a very simple idea. Something had happened at a boys' boarding school, and a journalist who'd attended the school and grown up there was sent out to report on what had happened. As an idea, I didn't know what had happened. I just know that something was happening. So that's how simple the idea was. With Broke Road, when I finished Black River and basically I was asked to write two more books and base them as a series around this detective Rose Riley. Um, that all appealed to me. I wanted to do that, but of course I didn't have an idea. So I was a bit stumped and I was pushing around a bit with setting, probably get out of metropolitan Sydney. So I moved it to the Hunter and I rang a forensic pathologist who'd worked with me quite closely on Black River, I interviewed him essentially to try and get the pathology, the forensic pathology around the murder investigation right. Or
mhm.
if you can start with things being right, then you can expand out. It's just you're always wanting to make it believable and bring the reader along. So I do the research and then try and wear it lightly. So I rang him and said, Alan, his name's Alan Carler. Alan, we've got to write another book. And what are we going to do? And Alan said, well, I don't know because you're the bloody author. Um, And then, without pause, he said, however, if I, as a forensic pathologist, Alan Carler, wanted to murder someone and not have someone like me, a forensic pathologist, know whether it had been a murder, even, or how things had happened, this is what I would do.
Oh,
Exactly. That's what I said. And so then I sat there and he explained what he would do. And it was essentially, as a non-spoiler for people who haven't read Broke Road, it was about the way that materials interact with skin if a killer was, for instance, binding hands or gagging mouths or binding feet. So that the type of material that wouldn't show up on autopsy if these sort of things had happened. So a forensic pathologist looking at a body wouldn't have a clue. So that was what he told me, and that then became the sort of foundation idea of Broke Road. So when Riley goes up to see this first body in the Hunter, that's what she's running into. And
that,
and, and so the book starts really from there.
oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Mm.
Oh, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that for a prompt. Oh my goodness. Now, the setting for both your books is key. So, how important is setting to you, and what made the Hunter Valley the right setting for this story?
I mean, I think as a sort of, a second time author in the genre of crime, I think setting's very, very important. And I suppose, that idea of trying to almost make your place where you're setting it become a character in the story. So in Black River, I had this old boarding school at Parramatta. Um, and this, I didn't know all this to begin with, but this is what we sort of worked out and got to over 3 years and 10 or 12 drafts. Just so that place at Parramatta is empty. It's a big old colonial estate with lots of big stone buildings, a tributary of the Parramatta River, a creek running through the back of it, a lot of native forest, remnant native forest that's actually survived on the Cumberland Plain, and not much of it has. So that was really important. So rather than me, this institution, this boarding school, it was that, but it was this empty institution that attracted me. And that's what we then really started to try and work up. So it's not really a book about private boys' schools or anything. It just
Mm.
happens to be set on an empty one. And you take it when you write a first novel, all you can do is take it to publishers and try and sell it. And I think one of the reasons that Black River was bought was that they were attracted to that setting because they hadn't really seen it before.
Yes.
So I learned from all of that that setting's important. I then thought I would like to get out of Sydney. I know Sydney quite well. Been born and raised in Sydney, lived here all my life. I mean, I've lived in other spots, but really Sydney. And I thought if I get out of Sydney, that might extend me a little bit as a writer. So rather than fall back on what I know, it'll push me to to learn about somewhere else and try and bring it to life in my imagination. So that was the reason. And then I went to the Hunter, and I was drawn to the idea of Cessnock, which is this proud old mining town at the bottom of the Hunter, but it's the gateway town to the wine regions. So you would have this in Mornington. There would be similar places, or Ballarat, or I've just been in the Barossa. There's three little towns in the Barossa. Or the Margaret River, it doesn't matter where you are, except maybe Northern Territory and maybe Queensland, although I know the Queenslanders do have wine. But all these states have these wine regions, and the Hunter just happens to be the oldest and main one for New South Wales. And it's got this town of Cessnock. But the thing about Cessnock is it's never incorporated itself into that tourism or into that wine region the way that Nuriupta has in the Barossa, for instance. And so I was interested in having these two communities, the old mining town, which is also now a prison town, so there's a lot of people who work in the jail, against the farmers and then the tourist industry of the Lower Hunter. And they don't get along, and they refuse to get along. And so they're rubbing up against each other. And I thought that's an interesting spot
Mm,
to start with a crime novel. So
yes.
that's why I chose it. And I know it the way that someone from Melbourne might know, the Yarra, really.
Yeah.
You go
Yeah.
there, you go there a lot over your lifetime for various reasons. But so and I also had a friend whose family is old Hunter people, so he was able to introduce me to people. So I had people
Ooh.
to then talk to.
Oh, that's really good.
Hmm.
Yes. So I'm going to ask now about somebody else that might have helped you because you are highly praised for your police procedural detail. How did you get it so right?
Well, I'm not sure that I did. Don't tell anyone. But I think what I've done, and what I'm trying to do, and really all I can do, having never worked as a police officer, all I can do is talk to police officers, try and get as much out of them as I can, try to get the detail that I start with correct. So if police officers went to this scene in The Hunter, what would happen and what would they do? You can get that much. But eventually, as a novelist, if you haven't lived the life, you're on your own. And what I mean by that is what that officer does at Tuesday at 11 a.m., which as a
Yes.
journalist I know, but as a police officer I don't. So I see it as start with the facts as they present them, try and get them right, and then really my job is to bring you along as the reader, believing it even if it didn't quite happen like this. All I need is for you, what I'm trying to do is to have you not doubt it. And that's really important.
I I never doubted it. I
Oh,
felt
that's
like
good.
I was watching a crime show while
Yeah.
I was reading it. So
Mm.
yeah, never doubted it
And a
once.
lot of that is also, I've had very, very strong editors with both my books, different people actually, both Melbourne women. So they're important in that process. So editing, I mean, people wonder what editors do. One thing, I mean, really, the editor's just there to represent you, the reader,
Mhm.
and to challenge me on everything. So if you're being challenged by a good editor and they're like, oh, that doesn't sound right, then, you can actually come back to them and say, well, it's exactly right because this is where I got it. It doesn't sound right, but it is. Or you can fix it. So you're always being challenged. So it's research up to a point, and then you're on your own. But you do have teams. It is quite collaborative. You've got people always second guessing you and trying to make it as streamlined as possible. The other thing I think is where you've got to wear it lightly. Like no one actually really wants to get bogged down into what the cops might actually really,
No,
because that would be terribly dull.
it would
Um,
be very boring.
yeah, so just it's all about what details are essential to the story for either character or plot, and what can be cast aside. And in the end, the most important thing is, I think, is the reader and bringing the reader along. And anything that's not doing that is out the door.
I agree. Now, so many journalists turn to writing crime fiction. You've got like Michael Robotham and Chris Hammer and Jane Harper and Tim Aleph, and that's only a few of them. And you've spent 2 decades as a journalist. How has that shaped your fiction, and why do you all write crime?
Why do we write crime? I mean, journalists write other things as well, I suppose. Why do journalists write crime? I mean, I can't really answer that except for me, and that's to say that despite having a degree in literature, where I didn't read a lot of crime for my degree, what I wanted to do when I sat down, when I thought I'm going to try and write a novel, the most important thing was I wanted it to be an entertainment. So,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I wanted it to pull you in and pull you along. And for me, I suppose the bedrock of that for me is a book such as Red Dragon by Thomas Harris, which is actually from the 80s.
Yes.
If people haven't read it, I recommend it highly. It's an FBI story about catching a serial killer. So it's a procedural, but it's more FBI than sort of local cops. But it's just very, very good. It's very tight or scary. Um, so that's what I wanted. That was, if I was going to write something, that was, I suppose, where I wanted to try and aim for. Um, so that really is how I came to write crime. I think also journalists, as I said earlier, a lot of people might become journalists because they'd like to be writers, but they can't or they don't know how or whatever. So it is that adjacent thing. You are working with words, you are writing. It's just you don't happen to be writing fiction, or even non-fiction, although, of course, a lot of journals obviously do write book length, book length non-fiction as well.
Yes, absolutely. What part of crime do you enjoy the most? The plotting or the characters or the atmosphere or the research?
I don't enjoy the research. It's just something that I have to do. I mean, I like talking to people, but I'll be frank, it's not something I really enjoy. I don't wake up in the morning and think, I mean, no offense, Gary Jubilant. I've got to have a 20-minute chat with Gary. I like chatting with Gary, but it's nothing to do with Gary, but it's just sort of work, I suppose. And
Yeah.
it's stressful because you're wasting his time and you might miss something and all that. So I don't actually enjoy the research. And and as I go on, I think, you do little bit less and less of it. I know talking to Chris Hammer, he doesn't do much research anymore on sort of book 7 or 8. He knows what he needs and what the story needs. So
Yeah.
I'd probably like to get to that position. But I also think if you can get kernels of truth into it and talk to people
Mm.
like a real homicide detective or my forensic pathologist, that's all good. I find plotting, I find plotting in the way that the book just unfolds, the story quite comes to me quite naturally. I'm not saying I enjoy it, but it seems to roll. but I find the sort of idea of a swerve at the end, or people think I've seen people who say that's sort of quite easy. That to me is hard. To have a reveal or
Mm.
something which is about characters who you've developed working the way they should. So, I mean, the reveal where you wake up and it's all a dream is not what you want, right? And
No.
to get the good ones in, I find that difficult. Black River, I think, is strong in that sense. I think the who done it aspect of that is
Mm.
is really strong, and it just I at 30,000 words in that book, I didn't know who done it. And
Oh, really?
yeah, and at draft 8, when I saw the book as complete, uh, there's two reveals in Black River. So there's a first reveal and then a second. That second reveal in my early drafts just didn't exist until someone said to me, "You might want to try and wrap this all up, for your reader."
Gosh.
So when I was, and that wasn't an editor, it was just a friend who reads in the genre, actually a newspaper editor, and he just suggested it. And so I thought about it. I thought, yeah, if I finished it, but who's and the weird thing was that the character that I needed to finish the story was already sitting there in the text. And it just, I
Amazing.
sort of remember when it hit me. So I think in that book, that was, I mean, maybe luck, but everything, but that was quite good because it's hard to know for the reader who does it. And the first and then the second thing, they're sort of reasonably well camouflaged. In Broke Road, I won't say too much, but I did sort of play with conventions of the genre a little bit about who it could be or couldn't be. Um, and there's a danger of being a little bit too, you trip yourself up by being a little bit too clever.
Wait.
And again, I won't talk about that just because of spoilers, but it's sort of an interesting conversation. If it would be interesting for you as someone writing a book, talking to a writer just about decisions I made and why, but we'll leave that to another day.
Yes. Now, your reviews have been extraordinary for this book. Chris Hammer, Malcolm Knox, Michael Brissenden, Michael Rowbotham, Candice Fox, my own mentor, Hayley Scrivener. How does it make you feel to be supported by your own writing peers?
Really wonderful, actually. Malcolm, in particular, has been um, a great mentor. I suppose not in the not in the way that you're mentored by Haley. I didn't have that sort of actual thing in place. But what
Mm.
happened with me? I suppose my mentor was a woman called Meredith Rose, who was
Oh,
a fiction editor at Penguin Random House, and she left Penguin and Random House and went to Simon and Schuster. And between all of that for her, she worked with me on Black River for 2 years.
wow.
I just contracted her, and so it was back and forth for 2 years. And I mean, she's edited a lot of great Australian fiction, and here was me who didn't even know how to control point of view and things. So all of that for me was Meredith. She just, and she would just send stuff back, and I would work on it and come back to her. And eventually, as I said earlier, she began to realize, okay, he's got the tenacity to do this because writing really is rewriting. And if you can take
Mm.
feedback and rework stuff, doesn't mean all feedback's correct and everything needs to be reworked. You need to make your decisions. But if you have the ability and the thick enough skin to do that, you're probably a long way towards actually getting a book into shape. So Meredith helped me, but then these published authors have been wonderful. Malcolm read the book as a sort of scout for Allen and Unwin and sold it into Allen and Unwin for me. So he sent it to a fellow at Allen and Unwin called Tom Gilliat, who published Black River. Uh, and then Haley and I, so Black River came out in the same month as Haley's first book, Dirt Town. So we're in touch. And if I'm in Wollongong doing something, she'll come along. I was down there talking to Mitch Jennings, Mitch's book, Town
Yes.
Called Treachery, and Haley came along. So people are very collegiate
Mm.
and supportive, and that's wonderful. And the thing also I find is that I attempt to just give that back. So I was asked today to do a blurb for a book that's coming up next year, and of course I said yes. And I've just read Tim Ayleth's next book that's coming out in January. and given an endorsement for that. So doing that and then talking if someone, needs a lot of the stuff that you yourself would do. I mean, obviously on your podcast, but also in real life, where you sit up and chat to authors. So if anyone ever asks me to do any of that, my answer is always basically yes. I mean, 5% of the time, just because of something, it'll be no. And I think I mean, Candace just interviewed me, and I was like, what? Candace Fox is coming to interview me
Candace Fox.
in Epping on a Sunday, giving up her Sunday, because that's the type of person she is, and she's supportive and generous. And I think the crime writing community, I mean, you would know that yourself, but there's a lot of
Mhm.
that goes on. Much more, I
Absolutely.
think, more than the literary folk. Apparently, the literary folk all hate each other, but I don't know
I know.
anything about that.
I, I just went to the launch for Kate Mildenhall's new book, The Hiding Place, and she said the reason why she wrote a crime book is because all the crime people are so great.
Yeah, yeah. I
She
mean,
just
someone
wanted to
like
be part of the gang.
yeah, and Chris Hammer is amazing because he's
Oh, amazing.
so generous and just such a lovely man.
Yes.
So all of that, yeah, it's been wonderful to become a part of that, I suppose.
And do you think that because having been a journalist, you're more inclined to write to a deadline, stick to a deadline, get it out?
Perhaps, although I find writing fiction quite compulsive. So
Oh,
I'm writing my third book now, and I'm a little bit like you. I'm at about 70 odd thousand words. I'm coming to the end of a first draft. No one's actually read it. I think it's quite good, but I might be in for the shock of my life. But I work on that every day, and I work on that 7 days a week. So I
oh,
work on that on Christmas Eve. I would work on that on Christmas Day if I could get away with it, but I can't. And
no.
it's not really a discipline because it's a compulsion. And if I don't do it, I think it must be like a runner who doesn't get their endorphins or something, although I don't know that because I'm not a runner. But if I miss, if I can't sit and do it each day, I tend to get a bit crabby. Um, but when I say that, I'm also only working, it might be 2 hours or 1 hour. I mean, Monday to Friday, I'll probably do 4 hours or maybe five. And on a Sunday, I might do two or three. The point is that, and it's this self-fulfilling cycle of when I wake up, there's nothing I want to do more than get down to the desk and get started. And when I've finished, however many hours later is, there's nothing I hate more than what I'm doing. So, and every day it's the same. It's always the same. So I'm always completely jack of it by the end of it and ready to go again in the morning. And I think a lot of writers would probably describe um, a similar type of thing. And certainly as a journalist, I never had that. Journalism was just a job that had to be done that I didn't really want to do. So they are different things, I think.
So you've just said that you're writing a third novel. Will we be seeing more of Rose Riley and Adam Bowman?
Well, look, if they survive Broke Road, which hopefully people can have a look at, then maybe. No, they will. They will. Yes. So Riley will certainly be there as the main character of the third book. And when I sold the books, I sold three books with the idea that they would be centered around Rose Riley. So they're published in America and actually known as the sort of Rose Riley
Yes.
series or something, which the Aussies don't quite get to that point. Um, but yes, so it's definitely a series. And again, it will hopefully be a standalone that someone can just pick up and read without having read either of the first two. I think what you get from the first two as you go along is hopefully the evolution of their relationship together, which isn't, then it's not sexual or anything. I don't think, again, no spoilers, but just the way they interact and have now known each other as people. By book three, they've known each other for 3 or 4 years. Where in Black River, they're meeting for the first time. So you're getting that character development if you read them sequentially, but if you don't, the story I think you can just drop straight into.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree. Now, because we love to ask, what are you reading at the moment?
Well, bizarrely enough, well, not bizarrely at all, I suppose. It's just that I hadn't followed the case as closely as some people, but I'm actually reading The Mushroom Diaries,
Ooh.
which I'm loving. And I wasn't attracted to it. The whole idea of like the three superstars and the case itself, it all just seemed a bit ghoulish and everything. But I read the extract that they published in the Fairfax Press a couple of weeks ago,
Mm.
and I just found it fascinating. So I thought, oh, well, I'm going to read this, and I'm absolutely loving it. I'm quite close to the end. It's just brilliant. And for me, it's also, I think it's great research for me because I'm a male writer writing police procedurals with a female protagonist. And here's three, great female writers talking about this procedural case and looking at it. So I'm getting a lot out of it from looking at it from that angle, just for my own sort of selfish, research needs. But it's very readable. It's a lovely concept, I think, of coming up for of doing the book the way they have. I'm sure your readers or your listeners know a lot about it, but just that conversational tone. There's a bit of humor that leavens it a little bit. And I think they're just looking at the case and looking at the person who did it and trying to understand why people act
Yes,
in
yes.
this way, which is really what crime fiction's all about as well. It's like, why do human beings do these bizarre things? So yeah,
Oh, that's a great recommendation because we don't often get nonfiction recommendations. So
yeah,
that's brilliant. And honestly, if Helen Garner wrote a shopping list, I'd read it.
exactly. And but so Helen's there, but the other two are, I mean, obviously great. I didn't know Sarah as well as the other two, but the voices of the three are sort of maintained throughout and are very strong and very, very interesting. So I would, and it's short, so I would definitely, and don't let if you're sort of a bit put off by the whole case and the fascination with it, I wouldn't let that put you off. I think it's an interesting way of reading about it.
I think so too. Now, that is time on our interview. It's always surprising how fast they go. Thank you all for coming along tonight and watching us live. If you are watching this on YouTube or listening to the podcast, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Let us know what you think in the Reading by Candlelight Facebook group or on socials. And it's our final author interview for 2025, and what a book to finish on. If you haven't read this yet, Broke Road has plenty of twists and turns and red herrings to keep you captivated from the very first page. And with compelling characters and fast moving plot, it's everything that you want in a crime novel because it's full of mystery and intrigue. And it's just a really, really brilliant read. Now, I'd like to thank our author, Matthew Spencer, for chatting with me and for being Reading by Candlelight's December crime thriller book box author.
Thanks, Fiona. Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Wishing everyone happy reading and a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from the Reading by Candlelight Book Club at Molly's Cottage.